Welcome to DreamHaven Books. I am Catherine Lundoff. I am your host for tonight. Nobody is sitting anywhere near me, so I'm taking my mask off so I am less muffled when I read. Um, and I'll announce this a couple of times as we go along. We're going to do some prize drawings tonight and there'll be the opportunity to ask some questions. So I will take a look in the chat. If you'd like to be entered in the prize drawings, put a comment on the event page and I will see it later. If you are not if you're not logged into Facebook and you are still watching this, email me or comment on the Queen of Swords Press Twitter feed because that's the other place where people are coming in, and we'll work it out. We'll make it work. Prizes include a fabulous gift card to this lovely bookstore, DreamHaven Books. There's also going to be 2 gift cards for the International Wolf Center up in Ely, and I'll be doing a drawing for signed copies of the Wolves of Wolf's Point series. Okay, so those of you who've been following me for a bit, who are familiar with how things have gone, know that there was an earlier edition of this book, Silver Moon, came out a few years ago with a different publisher. Stuff happened. Wacky hijinks ensued. Wacky hijinks went on for a while. And then in 2017, I decided to pursue my own form of wacky hijinks, and I opened Queen of Swords Press. You can see our fabulous banner, which is just not getting enough play these days. So that's why I brought it. And so Queen of Swords Press was founded in 2017. I started with my own backlist, and we immediately put out a couple of collections. This was the first book, Out of This World. That's a collection of my science fiction, fantasy, and horror with LGBTQ protagonists. Did a couple of other books under one of my pseudonyms, and then we did a new version of Silver Moon. This one has some name changes. It's a couple of thousand words longer than the version that came out in 2012. It's got some other fixes to it. Plus totally new format, new publisher, new design, all of that good stuff. And we then went on to do a mini collection of my work, Unfinished Business. This is my horror and dark fantasy. This is one of our minis. This is our novella length collections of linked short stories. And I edited this anthology, which came out in 2019. This is called Scourge of the Seas of Time and Space, and it is a collection of fantastical pirate stories. So it's a mix of pirate stories from authors, historical pirates, fantasy pirates, science fiction pirates. Minneapolis author / Hopkins author Michael Merriam has a story in it. Author Jen Hale has a story in it. A whole bunch of other wonderful authors are featured in it. Authors from Malta and Singapore. It was really, really a great project to work on. We have also published The Voyages of Sinrak the Dapper, which is this is another one of the minis. This is a marvelous collection of linked stories about a dapper lesbian capybara pirate by author A.J. Fitzwater, who is based in New Zealand. And AJ is a multi-time Vogel Award winner and has won other honors and has been featured in New Zealand media and is just doing great, great things. Sinrak came out at the start of lockdown last year, and AJ, being a trooper, immediately put out another book with a New Zealand press like a month or so later, called No Man's Land, which is also novella length and is also very much worth checking out. It's with Paper Road Press. We also publish Alex Axe, who writes for Angry Robot as Alex Wells. And we have 2 collections of Alex's linked steampunk stories, Murder on the Titanic. These are set in an alternate American West. There are steamships and dirigibles and murder mysteries and all kinds of fun stuff. The protagonist is a Latina land pirate named Marta Ramos, who has her own crew, and Marta has a sidekick named Sims. And their banter is hilarious. They spend a lot of time, inadvertently fighting evils when they're determined to go make money. And they're just really, really fun stories. Murder was a finalist for the Colorado Book Award when it came out, and Wireless was a finalist for the Midwest Book Award last year. Anyway, hope you check some of those out. Coming up later on this year, that being 2021, this summer we're going to be releasing a new novel by New Zealand author Rem Wigmore. And Rem has been publishing quite a few things in the last few years, lots of short fiction. They have another novel out also in New Zealand, and a novella series, which is really fun. The novella series they're doing with our web designer, Andy Buchanan, who also does a bunch of great writing and editing. And then in the winter, we're going to be publishing local author and agent Jenny Goloboy's first novel, obviously Aliens, which is a fun-filled, wacky road trip, body switch, aliens, kind of novel. It's going to be a lot of fun. Rem's novel, Fox Hunt, is hope punkish, post-apocalyptic, set in what is recognizably Earth, but it's Earth after the ecological apocalypse, after things have been, getting rebuilt for about a century or so. And just really, writing's lovely. The characters are really memorable. They're both great books. I'm really looking forward to working with these authors. So, fast forward to the now. So this book, Blood Moon, I started working on shortly after Silver Moon first came out, and a bunch of stuff happened. Lots and lots and lots of stuff happened. So for a couple of years, I didn't really get back to it. And people kept politely asking me when the sequel to Silver Moon was going to come out. And I kept saying, soon. And, after a while, I felt a little bad about it because I'd been saying soon for a while. So finally, I really was able to knuckle down the last year and a half and really work with it. Got it done. Got it, we went through edits, we got the design process and everything. Originally, my plan was to try to put it out in December of last year, but neither it nor I was ready for that at the time. So we decided we were going to move it to March, aim for a 3-book year, and plan accordingly from there. I'm really excited about this book, and not just because I got it done, although that's a factor too. I'm really hoping that the readers enjoy it. I think that, if you haven't read Silver Moon at all, you probably will get more out of it if you read Silver Moon first. But, you could conceivably read it on its own and, enjoy it too. So the Wolves of Wolves Point novels, there are now the 2 of them. I have already been asked if there's going to be a third, so apparently I need to start thinking about that. Are about, Silver Moon is about a woman named Becca Thornton who is living in a town called Wolf's Point in what can be read as either Colorado or New Mexico-ish. And she's in her early 50s. She's just gotten a divorce. It's somewhat acrimonious. Her husband dumped her for somebody else. And she's involved, there's a local women's club. She's involved with that. She works at the hardware store. As far as she knows, she's been straight her whole life. And so she's, just turned 50. And she doesn't know that the Valley has place-based magic. And what that means is that within the confines of the Valley, there's been a long-standing magical spell that some of the women entering menopause also become werewolves, and in turn are expected to become protectors of the Valley. And so she, nice howl there. So she ends up becoming one of them. So she joins the pack, and she has a crush on her next door neighbor Erin, and some people who bill themselves as werewolf hunters come to town. Stuff happens. You got to read the book to find out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the first transformation scene from from Silver Moon, to kind of set the tone. So for those of you who may not have read it yet, or might need a refresher because you read it when it first came out, this is where it all began. Blood Moon, as a brief preview of that, what I'm going to do is read the first chapter of Blood Moon, which is fairly short, And Blood Moon is a combination murder mystery romance, and it's told from the perspective of both Becca and Aaron. So I switched chapters. So you get kind of a more holistic view of the town and the wolf pack and everything that's going on. Um, the romance element is part of it, but it's also part of a story about coming out at midlife, about building community, about creating connection, about transformation and changing into a werewolf because yay. So there's a bunch of things packed into these books. And yeah, so without further ado, I'm going to grab a swig of water here and start reading. Okay, so this is a little bit from chapter 4. So Becca's been told that the women's club has this night for older women who are just kind of entering menopause, and she doesn't know that she's going to change. Her pack alpha, who is one half of the couple that runs the hardware store that she works at, has been dealing with a sick parent and hasn't been around. So people just, kind of let it slide off their radar. And then we're like, ooh, guess we should have thought of that. So that's where this begins. The doorbell interrupted her, and she dashed out to let Aaron in. You ready? Aaron grinned down at her, a disturbing light in her silver-tinted eyes. My, you look good enough to eat. Becca shivered all over and fumbled for a response. Thanks. Guess we better get going, was all that came to mind. She grabbed her purse and pushed past Aaron in her rush to avoid making eye contact. Aaron led the way to her car without further comment. The whole drive out to the Wolf's Point Women's Club felt odd and awkward, at least to Becca. Aaron chatted away about town gossip and projects she was doing around her house like nothing was wrong, as if her passengers always ignored her on mysterious trips out to the club. Becca stared out the window and mumbled responses. Part of her wondered why she was so wound up about margaritas and menopause, as she'd mentally dubbed tonight's event. It was as if she could feel something huge and important hanging over them. Whatever it was felt like it was inside her, too, coursing through her body with every thump of her heart until her skin felt it was like all that stood between her and some huge and monstrous transformation. Stage fright had never felt like this before. She rolled down the passenger window to get some air on her overheated face. It didn't help. Becca almost bolted from the car when they got to the club. The woods on either side of the little red brick building beckoned. The inviting darkness under the trees called, and the moon... When did she become such a nature freak? Sure, walks in the woods were fine in their place, but in the dark? Though, come to think of it, it wasn't that dark, even though the sun was down. She could almost see every twig in the darkness under the trees. Her fingers tightened on the car door as she struggled to keep herself from running into the woods. Later. Aaron's voice came from way too close, and Becca shuddered at the promise in it, even as she turned and reluctantly followed her neighbor into the building. She tried to analyze that feeling of dread as she walked into the club. Mostly, she just thought that she wasn't ready for dealing with the change, with a bunch of women she clearly didn't know that well. That must be it. Night had come on, and she wanted its darkness to hide all these stupid thoughts and emotions. It was too weird to share. Somehow, the words to ask Aaron if any of this had been like this for her wouldn't come to her lips, and she was left mute and quivering. Once inside, it got worse. It was like she'd never seen the place before, though that was a ridiculous notion since she'd been coming here for ages. It was just that she'd never noticed the way it smelled like pine, or the little creaks and groans the wooden walls made around them. Tonight there was something new and sinister about the shadows, the lit candles on the tables, the expressions on the faces of her own neighbors that made it new and even a little terrifying. Why weren't the lights on? The candles gave the place a spooky look. Even Shelley seemed mysterious and scary tonight. She smiled at Becca, but her teeth looked too long all of a sudden, making her face predatory instead of welcoming. As Aaron had promised, there was a cake and a couple of pitchers of margaritas on the table, along with some cans of soda, but Becca no longer felt like this was nothing more than a simple celebration. The atmosphere was charged, and while she was thinking about it, where was everyone else? The women's club had more members than this. She could hear movement in the next room, but only Aaron, Molly, and Shelley were in the front. Erin poured her a margarita, and she gulped down half of it before she realized what she was doing. Shelley sat on one of the padded benches and pulled her down to sit next to her. Look, Becca, we weren't sure about what was going to happen tonight until a little while ago. Sometimes these kinds of changes come on really suddenly, and we don't have a lot of time to prepare. It brings on new feelings and transformations, physical and emotional. I know you're going through a tough time, and I'm sorry we haven't talked about it. Between my mom's illness and those guys coming back here, I haven't been paying as much attention to preparing you the way I should have. Becca wondered if she looked as puzzled as she felt. Who was Shelley talking about? Those warriors from the website? If they included that couple that by the river, that would make sense, given the logo on their van and her general bad feeling about them. What didn't make sense was why Shelley would care about them. Did they pose some kind of threat? And if so, to whom? Before she could ask, the front door opened, and other women began trickling in by twos and threes. Shelley sighed and patted Becca's shoulder. Don't worry about a thing. We all went through it our first time, too. It'll be hard to get used to it at first, but we'll help you. She stood and walked away to greet the others, leaving Becca staring after her in complete bewilderment. It looked like Shelley was standing up with some kind of signal. Molly came over and ushered Becca into the other room and into a large cushioned chair surrounded by a circle of other chairs. All the other women followed them in. Becca sat down nervously, the silence in the room making her twitchier by the minute. So am I being initiated or something? Her voice trailed off. Erin gave her a reassuring smile that made her think of a wolf's grin, and it was all Becca could do not to run for the door. She made herself look around as the others, all 20 or so of them, sat down. She recognized women she'd seen around town, though not all of them lived in Wolf's Point proper. There was Mrs. Wee, whose family ran Wolf's Point, and Carly Simpson, the Baptist pastor's wife. Her neighbor, from a few doors down, Gladys Sherman, nodded from her seat. Adelia Rodriguez from the gas station on Central gave her a shy smile. She didn't know the others by name, but all were women of a certain age, as those stupid magazines put it. None under 45 or so, but all hale and hearty. There was something else they had in common, too, though she couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. Erin set up a large mirror across from her so she could watch her own frowning, searching face and stiff body. This senseless gesture annoyed her, and she found herself snarling a little in response. And there, just for a minute, was the face that had terrified her the other day in her bathroom mirror, and she flinched away, shivering. Surely she didn't look like that all the time now, did she? Despite her fear, she could feel that same wildness building in her. Something was clawing its way to the surface inside her, racing beneath her skin and preparing to break through. She wanted to run and hunt and feel the wind outside. It made her impatient, and her feet and hands tapped the floor and the chair in time to her pulse. As if Becca's mood was contagious, Shelley glanced out the window, then cleared her throat and stood. She held a long red taper in her hand, the flame dancing on an air current as it crossed the room. Distracted from her troubled thoughts, Becca imagined that her boss looked like an old-time shaman in a painting, standing there with her long black hair flowing over her shoulders and her dark eyes looking out on forever. She had never seemed so beautiful or so much a complete stranger. Shelley cleared her throat and said, I think we're ready to begin. The moon is starting to rise and we'll need to be ready. Thank you all for coming to welcome our member, Becca Thornton, as she enters the change that has taken each of us in our time. Let us help Becca embrace her own transformation and join with us to make the pack stronger. She waved the candle in a strange pattern and sprinkled something on the floor as she walked forward and circled Becca's chair. The hell was this? What was the pack? Becca's thoughts were frantic now, her skin burning. She could feel the sweat trickling down her back and sides under her shirt, her heart racing so fast that she trembled with each beat. Her whole body felt odd, out of place, as if it belonged to someone else. Everything was too long, too short, too stretched, too furry. Furry? That was the thought that put her over the edge. She closed her eyes against the sudden wrenching pain that shot through her, starting at her feet and working its way up. It was like being pulled in 15 directions, unable to respond to any of them. Her hair was standing on end, and she felt her hands tighten on the chair. From somewhere close by, there was the sound of tearing and rending, of wood snapping. Something very scary was going on. The thought drove her to her feet, eyes open now and body tense to flee. Her movement showed in the mirror, and she glanced at it, then froze. Her face was long, her eyes golden brown. Her hair was working its way down her forehead in a V. She was crouched over, huge and menacing. Her hands were far longer than they should have been, with fingers whose nails looked like claws. They were also covered in a light brown fuzz. The arms of the chair she'd been sitting in were matchsticks now, the stuffing trickling down to mound on the floor. Becca Thornton opened her mouth to scream, but what came out was more like a cross between a howl and a yelp. She jumped forward, trying to get away from the monster in the mirror, and found herself bouncing back from the surrounding air as if she'd hit a wall. She spun around the chair, searching for a way out, clawing at nothing with hands that were no longer hers. Erin stood and walked up to the invisible barrier, whatever it was. She met Becca's eyes and held her gaze with a silver-eyed stare as she unbuttoned her shirt and pants. She undressed carefully and calmly, as if being naked before the Wolf's Point Women's Club was the most normal thing in the world. Becca whimpered as she watched. Watching Erin's lean form emerge from her clothes made Becca's throat dry, made her heart beat even faster. In that moment, she almost knew what she wanted from her neighbor. Almost. But it was all too much to think about right now. And her thoughts changed as Erin began to transform. Her change was quick and fluid, beginning with the stretching of her face and hands and ending with the growth of her fur. Within moments, Becca was staring at a large gray wolf with Erin's eyes. That was when she knew she was going insane. She had to be. Or had they all known all along what was going to happen and just kept it secret? A sense of betrayal so deep it made her bones ache washed over her. How could her neighbors and friends have kept this from her? Shelley's voice broke into her thoughts, forced her to hear something beside her own screaming brain. Wolf's Point has always held its own magic from time immemorial. In each generation, a group of women of middle years become its vessels and in turn the protectors of this land and its people. We embrace the spirit form of the earliest inhabitants, taking on their skins and their strengths. We embrace the forms and rituals of the settlers who came after the first ones. We are at once old and new. You are called to join us, Becca Thornton. The magic in your blood marks you as one of us. Do you hear its summons? Becca could feel her jaw drop. What was this, some episode of Buffy she'd never seen before? Sure, she heard a call all right, and it was telling her to run away from these crazy women and their wolves and their magic tricks, telling her to run into the woods, to feel the moon's song in her blood, the wind in her fur, to chase down her prey, and... Oh, shit. She stared at Shelley for a long couple of minutes, all the while feeling shifts in her body that couldn't be there. The other women were changing around Shelley now, and that wasn't helping. Becca could smell them all, for one thing, now that her senses were suddenly much more acute, and she could hear things that she couldn't possibly be close enough to hear, like traffic on the highway and noises from town. Meanwhile, Shelley kept on looking at her, clearly waiting for an answer. The hell was she supposed to say? And how was she supposed to say it with her mouth like this? She wrestled with her tongue and her fangs, making a whole series of weird noises in the process. Finally, she forced her long lips into something resembling human speech. Do I have a choice? Shelley's lips quirked in something like a smile, but wasn't quite. Not a good one. Sorry, Becca. The magic chooses its own. We don't control it. That was when the final wave washed through Becca. She dropped to her hands and knees and retched as the rags of her blouse fell from her shoulders. She clawed frantically at the remains of her pants and her underwear, yanking them off as the rest of the fur sprouted from her newly bare skin. Her jaws stretched open in a scream that became a howl. It was a sound of primal rage and terror, of wild magic turned loose. She rocked on her paws as a strange force filled her, changing her brain as well as her body. Becca now. Weird new combination of herself and something far wilder and more primitive. And I should stop there with that one. So, okay, so to reiterate, we're going to have some prize drawings later. And so what I need you to do if you want to be entered in the prize drawings is to make a comment on the event. And you can just say hi, you can just put a smiley face, it's fine, either of those things is fine. The prizes include signed copies. There'll be one set of signed copies of the Wolves books. We have a fabulous gift card to DreamHaven, where I happen to be at the moment. And there'll be a couple of gift certificates to the International Wolf Center gift shop, and those will be showing up soon, so I'll have those to send out. DreamHaven is my local bookstore for those of you who haven't had the fun of being here. It's located less than a mile from our house. I do a lot of events here. I usually do at least one of my book release readings here every time. You may recall last summer, after a lot of things burned down, I was here doing a talk about running a small press. I was talking about Queen of Swords. That was featured in Publishers Weekly. And it's been a really rough time for most Minneapolis businesses. Bookstores have been hit pretty hard. A lot of people know about Uncle Hugo's and Uncle Edgar's, which burned down. But, the others have also, taken some hits in a variety of ways. So I'm going to mention that all of our books, all of our print titles are available here from DreamHaven. You can find them on the website, or you can call and ask a staff member, and they would be delighted to sell them to you. And since we're like a mile away, I can just bring boxes of stuff over and drop them off. So it works out well for everybody. I can also sign things or personalize things if you want to buy things from the store. The store also has a fabulous collection of comics and art, and I will do a brief panorama view. My spouse in the audience, all kinds of stuff. Wave at my spouse. There you go. So all kinds of really cool things, and you could definitely use the extra business. So if you got some money to burn there, this is a great place to spend it. And Blood Moon is not up on the website yet, but after tonight, I'll be leaving some copies at the store. Like I said, it'll be available. It should be, up in the next couple of days in their catalog. Anyway, so like I said, please comment, and we can enter you all in things. If you are not logged into Facebook and you're still watching this, you can email me or leave a comment on Twitter, and I will check that, when I wrap up here, and we'll add that in. But yeah, so cool stuff. Okay, so Blood Moon. So I want to give a particular shout out to Queen of Swords Press book designer, Terry Roy. Terry did the covers for both books, and Terry does the print interiors for all of our books and just does these fabulous things. So you can see the Queen of Swords Press logo is in the moon above the wolves. And, lots of little neat touches, like the wolves running below the dedication. So I heartily recommend hiring Terry if you've got a book design project. And all of our books are designed by her. So we've got all kinds of really neat and cool things. And I'll show off Sinrak at the end, because that one is really spectacular. Okay, so Blood Moon starts a couple of months after Silver Moon ends. And, things have changed a fair amount. Becca lost her house. Is a situation where her ex had tried to negotiate with her to sell the house, and she was too busy turning into a werewolf, and so he just went ahead and sold the house because it was in his name. And so Becca's now living with Aaron across the street, and they're still resolving things and figuring stuff out. And so this is a couple of months into their living together, and we go from there. So chapter 1. Erin Adams looked out at the mountains and tried not to think about what was in the trunk of her car. At least the mountains around Wolf's Point were as beautiful as ever. She wondered if she'd get the chance to run through them again, feel the wind in her fur, the ground flying by under her paws, the pack at her side. That thought was enough to make her look back at her car. Erin rubbed her aching forehead with one hand and closed her eyes. This was, without question, the worst thing she'd ever done, even if she couldn't remember doing it. But maybe there was still time to call Shelley and get her help to figure a way out of this mess that she'd blundered into. That was what pack alphas did, or so Shelley kept reminding her. But that might make Shelley an accessory if they got caught, or rather, when she got caught. Erin closed her eyes for an instant. Lying was never a thing she'd been good at or wanted to get good at. Anyone she called would almost certainly go down with her. That thought weighed her down like a rock. The pack couldn't afford to be without its alpha so soon after they got her back, not to mention what it would do to Pete and the kids. There was no way that she could drag Shelley into this. Her thoughts turned to Becca, waded through a jumbled mess of back with a single realization. They'd suspect her first. Becca was her friend, her housemate, her something they still hadn't defined, but which felt more like girlfriend every day. Her stomach did a slow, leisurely flip when she thought about that, and she almost smiled. But this wasn't the time to think about Becca. She couldn't afford to be distracted, to be vulnerable. Not now. Maybe there was another solution, a way to hide what had happened. But then what? She'd still know, and she'd have to carry the burden of what she'd done, alone, and she knew where that road led. Falling off the wagon to cope with her guilt wasn't an option either. Besides, if she ditched the body out here and it was found, the regular wolves would almost certainly get blamed for it. The new governor was already pushing for a wolf hunting season, and that would put things right over the edge. She didn't want that on her conscience either. The wild wolves were kin as much as they were cover for the pack, as well as being important for local ecology. Erin ran her fingers through her short-cropped brown hair, wondering if there was anyone else she could turn to. But she couldn't think of any other pack member who'd be able to do anything about the situation, not more than she could do herself anyway. It certainly wasn't the sort of thing that her AA sponsor had signed up for, or any of her friends for that matter. So she was on her own. There was nothing for it but to lie in the bed she'd made for herself. She pulled her cell phone out of her pocket and selected a contact. Hi, it's Erin. I've done something. Can you just come up to Spruce Point? Yes, it's important. I want you to see it before Sheriff Henderson does. She clicked the phone off and glanced toward the road. Nothing to do now but wait. Scene break. Becca Thornton looked around Peterson's Hardware and sighed. Inventory was the worst. Better than unemployment, of course, but hands down her least favorite part of her job. How could she possibly have miscounted the 3/4-inch screws twice? She stared at them ferociously in their little plastic case as if she could compel them to give up their exact numbers with her mind alone. Are you trying to levitate them or something? Shelley Peterson appeared at Becca's side, her expression as baffled as her tone of voice. No. Becca put the screws down and stretched slowly, her muscles cramping a little from disuse. Not like they had before she started to change into a wolf once a month, but sore all the same. She twisted around, then back again, limited by the narrowness of the aisle. I think I need a good run. How about you? Shelley grinned, her dark eyes lighting up for an instant, almost golden in the store lights, then shifting back to their usual black, the change too fast for a normal human to follow. But she shook her head. And leave Pete to deal with this on his own? Not really fair, is it? She picked up the box of screws. How about you work the counter for a bit and I'll count pointy bits of metal? Becca grimaced and shrugged. That's why you're the boss. I'll take some stuff with me and work on inventory between customers. She got to her feet, thrilled once again at how effortless it was for her to stand up now with hardly a creak or an ache. It was almost as if becoming a werewolf was its own weird little fountain of youth. She grabbed a couple of containers of loose nails and tried not to grin at them. Shelley gave her a half smile, responding as if Becca had spoken out loud. I don't miss the classic middle-aged knee pop, that's for sure, or any of the other aches and pains. Pete even asked me to bite him last week to see if I could get his back to feel better. Like that would work around here. She rolled her eyes and sat down on the stool before picking up the container of screws. Becca chuckled and hustled over to answer the phone. Wolf's Point's werewolves weren't like the ones in the monster movies, at least not in most respects. You joined the pack because the valley's magic called you, not because another werewolf bit you. She shivered at that thought. It would have been horrible to join the pack by way of one of her friends or neighbors nearly mauling her to death. Her thoughts rolled on from there at full speed like they didn't have an off switch. Now she found herself wondering if getting bitten by one of her pack and surviving it would make someone some kind of super wolf or something. A memory of the wall paintings in the pack's cave made her wonder about that. There were more than a few unusual-looking and quite possibly superpowered wolves depicted in that artwork. If she was being honest with herself, she found them kind of scary even when they weren't running around the cave chasing off werewolf hunters. It had been only 2 months since she, Shelley, and Erin had called upon the cave's magic to protect them from the werewolf hunters who had them trapped in the cave. The wolf in the back of her brain stirred sluggishly, sending a surge of adrenaline through her. Her thoughts might have gone next to the werewolf slayer leaders, Annie and Anderson, one transformed into a monster and living in hiding somewhere in the mountains, the other slain by the living paintings, but the store was suddenly full of customers. It was a few minutes later that she realized that Shelley was taking a call of her own on her cell. What? Becca could hear the snarl in her alpha's voice from several yards away. You did what? Wait, why? No, wait, never mind. Where is she? Explain it to me when I get there. All right, I'm on my way. Shelley shoved her phone in her pocket as she lunged to her feet and surged toward the front of the store. Her eyes were gleaming gold as she leaned across the counter, her body taut and tense. Listen, Becca, I need you to stay here and keep an eye on things. Erin's been arrested, and I need to go talk to Lizzie about it. I'll call you as soon as I know more about what's going on. She started for the door, pausing with a jerk when Becca leapt out from behind the counter and grabbed her arm. You can't just leave me with that. Damn it, Shelley, I thought we were past all this pack secrets need to know stuff. What happened to Erin? Why would Lizzie do something like that? Becca could feel her heart begin to race, the wolf running under the surface of her skin. Control, control. She chanted the word to herself. Shelley's lips tightened, and for a moment Becca was afraid that she was just going to push past her and leave her to writhe in agonizing uncertainty. I don't know more than this. She called Lizzie and turned herself in. She's confessed to murder, and there was a body in the trunk of her car. Lizzie says that they hadn't identified it yet, and Erin doesn't remember what happened. I'll call you as soon as I know more, I promise. Shelley squeezed Becca's shoulder before vanishing out the door. Becca grabbed the edge of the counter to stop the store from swirling around her. Erin would never kill someone in cold blood. Well, not as a human, anyway. She was too kind, too honest, too... But what if it had been Annie? The werewolf hunter leader was still free, running in the mountains in a monstrous half-wolf, half-human form, and unable to change either way as far as any of them knew. What if she'd attacked Erin and Erin fought back? Or what if one of the others survived the explosion at their trailer and didn't get arrested afterwards and was back for revenge? Or maybe there was some new threat, something the rest of the pack hadn't seen yet. Her brain spun with the possibilities. Most important of all, how was she supposed to stay put at the store and act like nothing was wrong when everything in her screamed to go and help Erin? All right, and I shall end there.